This is Doug Dillingham, and this is my presentation on free speech in schools, understanding what free speech is in schools, understanding how teachers can deal with free speech, how students may view free speech, and some key landmark cases that led to students able to have free speech within schools. The article we read for class, or there was also a video in the article, Walling Off or Welcoming In from Harvard. I found it interesting. Understanding that the school culture committee, they're the ones who determine where and how to draw boundaries between free political speech and offensive or harmful speech. And basically dealing with, whether speech is offensive or harmful and what qualifies that speech as being offensive or harmful, and then leading into bullying and harassment. Um, we we are in a climate that's very divisive, so um, this also comes into our schools. Parents at home, things like that. Everybody's got different opinions and whatnot, and students are going to feed off the things that they hear, and they can be easily influenced with that. So, what is free speech? Free speech is defined as the right to express information, ideas, and opinions free of government restrictions based on content and subject only to reasonable limitations. I have the First Amendment down there. It's pretty much the same thing. Um, and we'll get into what that says a little bit later in one of the landmark cases for free speech within schools. I can honestly say that coming from a small school, some may think that we may be immune to this type of situation where, it's. I think people think with small schools everybody's a like-minded thinker and stuff like that, but we have a lot of diversity um, and a lot of different opinions there. For instance, and this is not a representative of our school. This was an example where this fell within those reasonable limitations. We had to take care of it. A student was drawing swastikas on his arm. That was immediately taken care of. Another example is a student, bringing up LGBTQ things within the classroom and stuff like that. That is fine. That's them expressing themselves, whatever. But drawing swastikas on yourself, that's kind of a harmful thing, and could seriously cause mental, maybe even physical harm to somebody as a result of that. So that one did get taken care of, and but that would be a great example of a limitation of free speech. What is the teacher's role in freedom of speech? Kind of like I pointed out before, that didn't happen in my classroom, but another teacher did handle that very well. She did not bring attention to the fact that the student had a swastika drawn on his arm. She did during one of our hand washing breaks. We take students to hand washing, especially during the COVID time, stuff like that. We took students to hand washing to make sure that they were constantly, keeping their hands clean, things like that. But at that point, instead of bringing attention or leaving her classroom, she did go to the principal's office, ask the principal to come take a look at it, and the principal also handled it very well. He didn't call him out in front of everybody. I was just asked a young gentleman to, hey, after the kids had already walked back, he asked them to step aside, and they discussed that from that point. So it was handled well. It wasn't, the attention was not brought to the student in front of any other students or anything else, which could be, a negative thing. Landmark freedom of speech cases. Some of these um, freedom of speech, or those cases like that, aren't just handled within the school. Some of these have gone to the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. Um, it's kind of mind-boggling to think that some things that happen within our school walls could be taken to this high of a level, which is the Supreme Court. Um, but yeah, these cases, and I'll discuss them a little further, go a little deeper into them, and you'll kind of see why they were taken to this level. The first one we're going to go into is Tinker versus Des Moines, 1969. Mary Beth Tinker was a 13-year-old junior high student in December of 1965 when she decided to wear black armbands to school to protest the war in Vietnam. Tinker was asked to remove the armband. When she refused, she was eventually suspended from school. The case was taken to the Supreme Court. The ruling from the Supreme Court They did rule that public school officials cannot censor student expression unless they can reasonably forecast that the speech will substantially disrupt school activities or invade the rights of others. So basically, you know, I wasn't alive during Vietnam. I don't really know, but I can try to like think back, and I can see this from both sides. Where Vietnam was a highly controversial war, but at the same time, you're going to have the other side looking at it as like, hey, our troops are over there. We support our troops, things like that. I don't know how she was viewing that. I mean, if it was going against troops or something like that, that's what upset so many people, or if it was the fact that, she was just against the war, which, obviously I don't think anybody's really fair in favor of sending young men and women over to war or anything of that nature. I can definitely see her side on that. Um, but this was a really groundbreaking case in which she was suspended from school for doing that. And eventually it came back that she did win this case. She won the case. Um, and that gave more freedom of speech within schools, which is important. Students should be allowed to voice an opinion on certain issues and things like that. The next one, this one's a little bit more lengthy. Bethel School District versus Fraser. I will warn you, this one does have sexual innuendo in this young man's speech, things like that. It's not meant to be discussed. Well, I'm not meaning to be disgusting. I just found it as, this one went the opposite way of the Tinker versus Des Moines. As the student gave a 2-minute campaign speech during a school-sponsored assembly. He used no four-letter words, but he did use sexual innuendo to describe a candidate for student government office. His speech went as follows. I know a man who is firm. He's firm in his pants. He's firm in his shirt. His character is firm, but most of all, his belief in you, the students of Bethel, is firm. Jeff Coleman is a man who takes his point and pounds it in. If necessary, he'll take an issue and nail it to the wall. He doesn't attack things in spurts. He drives hard, pushing and pushing until finally he succeeds. Jeff is a man who will go to the very end, even the climax for each and every one of you. So vote for Jeff for ASB Vice President. He'll never come between you and the best our high school can be. Later on, the school, Bethel High School disciplinary rule prohibited the use of obscene language in the school. Fraser was suspended for 3 days, but only served 2. This eventually ended up going to the Supreme Court, in which it was found that a high school assembly or classroom is no place for a sexually explicit monologue directed towards an unsuspecting audience of teenage students. Accordingly, it was perfectly appropriate for the school to disassociate itself to make the point to the pupils that vulgar speech and lewd conduct is wholly inconsistent with the fundamental values of public school education. We can see here that this student took it way, way too far, and this could be deeply offensive to some people. I, not knowing the student, I can see students doing something like this to try to be funny, things like that. But in the end, it is a deeply offensive thing. So that's an important rule with the school on this. My school uses Summit Platform. Summit Platform is created by Mark Zuckerberg, who does Facebook, all of that. Kind of popular for some certain other things, politically and whatnot. I do teach at a very conservative-minded district. My parents were very conservative, which does lead students to be conservative. Um, this was something that was found in one of the history lessons that was being gone through in, I believe, 8th grade, and it did cause some issues. Parents did call in, a couple did come up to the school, and so on and so forth. I'll read this to you. Um, in the South, however, white supremacists did not believe blacks should have any such rights. During Reconstruction, white supremacists formed political and social groups to promote whites and oppress blacks to enact laws that codified inequality. The Ku Klux Klan, founded in 1865, and the Knights of the White Camellia in 1867 were secret groups, while members of the White League 1874 and the Red Shirts 1875 were publicly known. All 4 groups used violence to intimidate blacks and Republican voters. This is where people got a little upset. In this time period, Republican would most closely represent the political, darn it. Sorry, my recorder cut off there. But I'm going to just start where I was. The last sentence there. Um, in this time period, a Republican would most closely represent the political views of Democrats today. Um, there were a lot of people that did take offense to that. Kind of like saying the Republicans are a bunch of racists and things like that, that they're aligned with the KKK and whatnot. And I do see why they took offense to that. That is kind of a harsh statement. I don't think that that's something that should be in an eighth grade curriculum. They could have left that out and things would have been totally fine. But that was thrown in there. And people did take strong offense to it. Before I go into my reference page, I do want to say that I am for having freedom of speech in school. I think it's a very dicey situation. We're in a political climate that I, in my time on this earth, I've never seen this much division, and it's something that um, teaching's. I love teaching, but it is a difficult job, and it's difficult enough. But having to worry about, constantly saying the wrong thing or, thinking that something may be wrong and you stop it and then you could get in trouble for it. That does make it kind of difficult. But, my recommendation is use your head, do what is right. And yeah, in the end, it'll all be okay. But again, free speech is in our Constitution. It's an important thing and something that we should never try to restrict on people unless it is going to be something that is harmful. So, thank you. My references are as follows there. Really enjoyed this assignment and hope you enjoyed my presentation.